Alright guys, so I got the A10 started here. Of course the plane is actually in the box. But the first thing you're going to want to do when you start a plane is make sure all your electronics work. So I've got, I'm going to be using 2 batteries with this jet because I feel I'll get a longer flight time. So what I'm going to be doing is, I'm going to be using 2 2-cell batteries. I've got 2 610s here, 610 milliamps. I've also got 2 460s and 2 430s. So I'm going to get the CG correct, and then I got a little bit of room in the canopy so the heavier batteries can go, you know, a little bit further up or back depending what the CG needs. And I'll just put some Velcro in there and they'll Velcro on where I need them to go. But so far I've got the motors working, and with 2 batteries, like I said, I think I just said this, I'll get longer flight time because it's running these EDF motors running off a single battery compared to 2, 1 each. Should give me a little longer flight time. Just hopefully I can get all the CG set up right. The motors are working perfectly. They're blowing the correct way. Everything appears to be working fine. So now all that's to it really is putting everything in the plane. I still have to attach the servos, but nothing really to test there other than to make sure they work, which I'll do really quick before I start setting them up. So now I'm going to start building the plane, and I'll show you the completed product and a little bit more as we go along here. Alright, so here's one of my next steps, but I've run into a definite snag here. My problem is I've got all these wires coming out of my motor mounts. And that's fine, no big deal, but my motor goes on right here. And the problem is, when I put my motor on, those 2 ESCs I showed, I was going to put one on each side. Then I've got all these wires that are going to be in the way of my aileron servo. And there's just tons of wires. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to do something like, I'm going to have to glue the wires inside of here and make them stuck so they can't move. But I've got a lot of wires to hide. A whole lot of wires to hide, and then everything has to fit into this little tiny compartment here where the aileron servo is. So I'm thinking I'm going to put one side together, glue all the parts of the side inside of here, maybe put my receiver around here, and then I'm going to have to somehow get cords. These aren't long enough. My power adapters, or my JST plugs, they're not going to reach from the back all the way to my batteries through the inside there, so they're too short. So I have to extend those, and then after I extend those, I can get them up to here, and I'll probably glue them into place up in here, right where the canopy is going to be. But I've just got this problem where there's this thing, and it's going to be hard getting those wires in there without bunching up and getting in the way of my aileron servo. The other problem was the elevator had a really long push rod. But I was planning to put the elevator servo in here, but there's no way I can. So what I'm going to have to do is take my elevator servo. What I'm going to do is I cut out a hole there. I'm going to have to put my elevator servo right in the bottom here. And it's going to kind of I'm going to have to cut out a little bit of the bottom of the foam, and it's going to go inside right here and then push the push rod. Of course it'll be a little lower, I'm not holding it in place quite right. But it might stick out of the bottom of the plane just a tiny bit. And then the push rod is going to go through the back of the plane. And as you can see, it comes through, and my elevator is going to be here. So it's going to go underneath, actually, it's just out of place. It's actually going to go underneath my elevator, and then it'll be the push rod there. So I'm going to shorten this rod a whole lot, put my elevator servo right around here. So it's behind all the cords. The cords for the motor come in here, so my ESCs are going to be sitting right here. My elevator servo I'm going to put right behind them, and I'm going to have to cut the hole in the bottom. It might stick out like a millimeter or two, not very much. And then I got to get all these wires, all the receiver, both the ESCs, everything inside here. It's a tiny plane, and it's a lot more cramped inside than I thought it was going to be. There's really no place to put anything. So it's going to be a little bit of a tough thing from here on out, but I'll get it done and show you guys what happens. Alright, so I made a little progress here. This is the plane upside down. Here are the motors, and this is where the ESCs come through. I got one in each side of the fuselage. I've got the motor, the wires from each ESC glued in to the top of the fuselage, and then I glued in on each side a battery connector, JST. It's glued into the foam there. So my battery I can plug in and pull out. I'm going to have two batteries actually, but I can plug in and then just pull them out, and they're glued in securely there with epoxy, so they should be pretty sturdy in there and not fall out. The ailerons I got all set up. Had to just use these metal push rods, and they just go in and then come up to the servo here. They're working fine. The motors work. I don't know if we'll be able to see them. Yeah, only one motor is working because I only have one plugged in. As you can see, I got that battery port ESC plugged in, but nothing plugged into, where'd it go? Nothing plugged into this one. So I'll just plug that in really quick just to show you that both the motors do work. Let me just plug in a second battery here. So they both work perfectly fine. As you can see, both of the sides are plugged in there. So I got this set up so the servo will fit in the fuselage now. I can fit the receiver in there now. Everything seems to be fitting now. Like, I was kind of scared everything would fit, but I seem to be getting it all fitting now. The last thing I got to do is get the elevator servo on and the elevator attached, and then pretty much just close up the fuselage and glue it together. So hopefully we'll get this together pretty soon now. It's been a little bit more of a challenge and a little bit more of some work than I thought it was going to be. It's not all laid out for you. You kind of gotta design the insides yourself. So we'll go ahead and get this finished, and I'll show you guys some more of the next steps, and then we'll show it to you when we're done.